Okay, welcome back to this session. We're at the point now where we can select a game and we can head into our game page and we can actually see the number being carried across. So it's time to build the game page. Some of the key features that you need to understand about the game page is right in this session information here. So from the form submit, from the menu file, it sends through the upper range. We then capture that through a session variable. So through game size, we capture that into game size, generate a random number, which is on line 22. And then we move to the next page and we're using a header redirect. So you need to use the information on line 26, which is header, location, and then you actually give the file name. So in this case, it's game.php. Now remember to use pothole case whenever you're using file names. So in PHP, the developer principle is pothole case, all lowercase and underscores. When we work with CSS and things like that, rather than underscores, they use minus signs. So there's little conventions. So remember that try to be consistent with the language and the conventions of the industry that when declaring variables and functions, etc. So let's get underway. Let's go into our game.php. At the moment, not much is happening. We have the title, we start the session variable, and then we just basically display the number to guess. So what do we need to do next? Well, we know this is going to be a page that's going to hold a whole lot of elements. So probably one of the first things I really need to do is actually start by making the page container. So the first thing I'm going to do is echo the div container. Therefore, I can apply the style sheet to container. We also need to close container off. And therefore, you close the div, and I've also got a HTML comment in here so I know what this closed div tag belongs to, so they belong together. So my page is going to sit in the middle here. So I'm just going to save that and refresh the page. You'll notice that nothing's changed. So let's now attach the style sheet to this. Now we know our HTML section's up the top here, PHP starts and ends here. So just underneath this title here, I'm going to put my link back to my style sheet. I can pick that up from index.html. It's the same link that is here because we're using the same site CSS. So I can just copy and paste that and save. So let's have a look at the page now. Refresh. You can see the background colors come in. So I've already made a lot of progress by just recycling some of the elements I've made before. Now you know we're going to have different sections. I'm going to have a title area which we're going to know as the page header. I'm also going to have the main area, which is the main working area where they're going to enter the guess, and I'm going to tell them if it's too high, too low, or correct. And I'm also going to need the footer area as well. So these are my different sections. Now what I might start with is the footer. What I might do is start with the footer, and the footer is going to be the same as the index.html footer. All I need to do is pick up these lines of code, and I'm just going to copy those and paste that into this area here. Just going to space it out a little and just put a line gap between those. So this is my footer section. Notice I've used a bit of different decorations. You might want to be consistent, but I find these sort of ones stand out a bit more. The other one that's consistent across all the pages is the header. So this is why we're using the header include. So I'm just going to copy this across and paste this here. Save, and now I'm going to refresh the page. When I hit refresh, you can now see we've got the number guess game and also the footer, and it's already centered in my page, and so I don't have to worry about doing any CSSing at this stage. Now I'm ready to put in some form elements so the user can actually enter in their guess and then hit a submit button so they can actually make a guess. So let's get underway for doing that. Now we know that's going to occur within the main section. I'm going to declare this as a div area called main. And also I need to close this area off as well, so I'll put that in straight away. So we'll be writing our code in this main area here. Now I would like to have an input area which they can type their guess into. So this is going to use a form element, and it's going to be a normal text box. So the input type is going to be text. We can also have a class associated with that, and we need to store the value that they put in there. And I'm going to store that value under user guess. So you can see what the value is. I've also added required here, so they must enter in a value. So it will not process the page unless they've typed something in there. We're not doing any error trapping in case they type some letters in there or some char in there, but we're assuming they're going to do the right thing at this stage. You may have to put some error trapping in a little later. So I'm just going to save that now and refresh my page. There you go. There is a text box I can enter some text into. Let's also create a submit button. Now you remember from our graphics, we actually have a submit that we made earlier. So let's use that to our advantage and let's put that on the screen. Now we've created buttons before and it's very similar to using an input type text, but what the action is going to be is from a button. So we're using a button type submit, and then we've got a class here which is the guest submit, so we can actually stylize this button if we would like to. And also it has a name submit and there's no value for this. We've also then closed that HTML tag and then opened the src image source and we've put the submit button in there. So let's see if this is working. So I'm going to just save that and refresh my page. Now if the submit button doesn't lose its transparency, hold down shift and hit refresh. You may have to pull the CSS back from the web server again, just in case it's cached on your computer. So at the moment we have our CSS done. We can click on the button now, but nothing's happening. We can type in the text box, so we can enter numbers. So the next thing we might want to do is just put a bit of a gap between the text box and the submit button. That requires us just to put a break tag. So on the end here you could add another one, or you can echo a hard one out. And that should make it look just a little bit nicer, that there's a bit of a gap there. We may have to enter some instructions for the user just in case it's not so intuitive. So let's put some information above the text box. So let's give them something like, can you guess the correct number? And we might actually use that as a header 1 tag. And also we might ask them to actually enter a guess. And that's going to be a H3 tag. And also I'm just going to put another break tag in there as well, just so there's a gap. Let's have a look at this now. Because we're using a common CSS, you notice the text is white. So this is starting to look like a game now. What we'll do in the next video is actually take their guess and start processing that to work out if they're correct, too high or too low.